Should you manufacture your product overseas? It's one of the biggest decisions you make as a founder, and getting it wrong can cost your business. So in this video, I'm gonna give you the real math. What actually costs, the hidden costs that nobody quotes you, what tariffs looks like right now in 2026, the paperwork you are legally responsible for, and a 5-question checklist to decide. I make my product in China. Last year, I woke up to 124% tariff on everything I sell. So I'm not going to give you a cheerful answer, but I'm gonna give you an honest one. Hi, I'm Gia. I built a Sichuan condiment brand from my home kitchen to over 1,200 grocery stores in the US, and I import every single unit I sell. So I'll pay for those lessons personally, sometimes very expensively. And if you're making anything physical, doesn't matter if it's food, beverage, home goods, beauty, at some point, somebody will tell you to just make it overseas. It's cheaper. True, this is so how you can actually evaluate that instead of taking their word for it. So one thing's up front, I am not anti-overseas. I still manufacture my product in China. I'm just gonna show you the real numbers and honest advices for you to decide yourself. So let's start with why anybody does this in the first place. So why overseas is tempting? The pitch for overseas manufacturing is simple. The unit price is lower, sometimes dramatically lower. I'm referring to products made in America, often around 2 to 4 times the pre-unit cost of an overseas equivalent, mostly because of the labor cost. That is a real gap, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But here's a trade. It is the one nobody leads with. Overseas gets you a better price by making you buy more. See that? Higher minimums, that's kind of the deal. So there's a rough rule of thumb the sourcing world uses, and honestly, it kind of matches with my experience. So under 2,500 units, domestic almost wins on total cost. Between 2,500 to 10,000, go hybrid, test domestic, scale overseas. Above 10,000 units, overseas economics start to genuinely make sense. So look at where new brands actually live. Most of you are launching in the hundreds or lower thousands of units, which means for you, the very first round overseas is usually the wrong answer. Not because it's more expensive per unit, but because it forces you to buy inventory you can't sell just yet. So there's a trap inside the trap. Your production minimums and your packaging minimums are 2 different things. So they're almost never matched. For example, your co-packer might run a 5,000 units for you, but let's say your jar supplier wants to sell you 50,000 units. So you write a check for 45,000 jars that are placed in a warehouse for a year. You should ask both questions before you fall in love with the factory. What is your production minimum? And what's the minimum on every component? Jars, lids, labels, cartons. Ask about split shipments. Ask about stock packaging instead of costume because stock almost always has a lower minimum. So now let's talk about tariff. That used to be the scary part, but now I need to give you the current picture because it's dramatically better. Back to my 124% tariff morning, that was the peak of the trade war between the US and China. Here's where things stand now. In February 2026, the Supreme Court struck down the IEEPA tariffs. Those were the big country-specific reciprocal surcharges. They got replaced with a flat 10% global surcharge under Section 122. And the effect was dramatic for a lot of countries. For example, Vietnam had been facing something like, I think, 46%. Taiwan and India were up in the 20s and 30s. Most of them collapsed down to 10% baseline, which is good. But China is still the outliner. China still carries its Section 301 duties on top. So it didn't get the same relief. Well, depending on whose measure you use and what exactly you're importing, the effective rate on Chinese goods has been running somewhere in between the 20s and lower 30%. But still a huge drop for 124, but it is the highest of any major trading partner. So for you, 2 things. First, find your actual HTS code, not just your category, your specific code. A single digit can be the difference between a viable product and a dead one because the rates stack differently by code. Second, Do not build a business that only works on one tariff rates. Stress test your margin at plus 10, plus 20, plus 30%. If it only survives at today's number, you don't have a business, you have a bet. So let's talk about the cost nobody quotes you. So this is a section I wish somebody had made for me because the factory quote is a number everyone fixated on, and it's maybe the half story. Cost number one is freight, and it swings wildly. Right now, we're in the peak season and Trans-Pacific rates have been climbing like hard. Spot rates to the West Coast jumped dramatically over just a few weeks this summer. Also probably because of the war. Depending on who you ask and when, a 40-foot container from China to the US can run anywhere from $3,000 to close to $10,000. Notice how I give you a huge range? That's because that's an actual lesson. Freight is not a fixed cost you can look up once. It's a market. I think the cheapest I've paid for a 20-foot container from Shanghai to Los Angeles is about $1,500, and the most expensive one is $18,000. That's back in 2022. So ocean freight costs move on fuel, capacity, port congestion, and season. If you build your pricing on last year's freight quote, your margin is already wrong. Cost number two is time, and time is your shelf life. Ocean transit runs roughly 15 to 21 days to the West Coast, 30 to 45 days to the East Coast, and then you gotta add 7 to 10 days for handling and customs. So now connect that to something I talk about in my 5 CPG realities video. You can check right here. Your distributor probably requires 75% minimum shelf life remaining when your product hits the warehouse. So if your product has a 18-month shelf life, it needs 13.5 months left on arrival. Take out production time, take out ocean freight, take out customs, and suddenly your actual selling window is a fraction of what you thought you bought. Overseas manufacture doesn't just cost money, it costs shelf life. And for food brand, that's the one nobody warns you about. So cost number three, cash. This is the real killer. Here is the sequence. So you pay a deposit, you pay the balance before it ships, you wait weeks on the water, you pay duties, you pay to unload it, and it sits in your warehouse. Then it goes to a distributor who pays you on net 30, 60, sometimes 90 days. Do that timeline in your head. You can be 4, 5, or 6 months out of pocket before a single dollar comes back. And the faster you grow, the worse it gets. Because growth means bigger orders, means more cash locked up. You can be profitable on paper and still run out of money. That's not a rare failure. That's one of the most common ways CPG brands die. Cost number 4, fixing mistakes from continents away. You've heard my leaking jar story from another video. 10,000 jars, oil-soaked paper seals, discovered only after they landed in the US. If that factory had been a 2-hour drive away, I would have caught it in a walkthrough. Instead, I found out when I opened a box on my own floor with my biggest purchase order already committed. Distance is a cost. It just doesn't show up on a quote. So how should I decide if manufacture overseas is the right move for me? Here is a framework I will use if I were starting over. Ask those 5 questions. Question number 1, how many units do you actually need right now? Not aspirationally, actually, under a couple of thousand, stay domestic. You are buying flexibility, and at that stage, flexibility is worth more than unit cost. Question number 2, is your product still changing? If your recipe, your format, or your packaging is still tweaking, do not lock into a high minimum overseas run. You will end up with a palette of a version you already moved past. Ask me how I know. Question number 3, can you survive the cash gap? Map it honestly. Deposit into final payment to freight to duty to warehouse to net 60 from a distributor. If that timeline will break you, the unit price doesn't matter. Question number 4, is there something overseas you genuinely cannot get here? This one is mine. So my chili coming from a specific protected region. My doubarjiang, which is spice fermented beans, is fermenting in clay pot for years. That isn't about a cost, it's about a product I couldn't make anywhere else. So if your answer is only it's cheaper, that's a weaker reason than you think, because cheap can be tariffed away overnight. I learned that at a 124%. Question 5, Can your margin survive a bad year? Freight doubles, tariffs jump, your currency moves. If your model only works when everything goes right, it's fragile. And this industry does not reward fragile. So, should you manufacture overseas? If you need volume, your product is stable, you can flow the cash, and there's a real reason it has to be made there, then yes, the economics can be excellent. If you're on your first round, still iterating and doing it purely to shave the unit cost, start closer to home. Prove the product first. You can always move production later. It's much harder to buy 50,000 jars. And whatever you choose, build your pricing so it survives a bad year, not a perfect one. If you want the deeper version of the pricing math behind all of this, from landed cost, distributor margin, trade spend, go watch my retail pricing video right here. It pairs with this one directly. So if this was all helpful, hit subscribe button. New videos every Wednesday or Thursday. See you next week.